Hi, this is Dr. Anna Lowe, and we're on this section where we're going to do part one of tips to creating a healthy, healing home. Super important topic. I think now that I'm a parent too, I've become more hyper conscious of how to maintain my home so that it's not only a place that I actively create a healthy, healing environment for myself and my family, where everywhere I am, there are bits and pieces that allows me to heal and feel really good. But I also are very conscious now to make sure I eliminate anything that's toxic, anything that would potentially overload my system, so that even, when I'm sleeping for 8 hours a night, I want to make sure that I'm actually benefiting, I'm recharging my system at the end of 8 hours rather than actually spending that 8 hours breathing in toxins, surrounded by, frequencies and surrounded by things that are passively making me less restful and overloading my health system. So I think in talking about the system of healthy healing environment, I have to start by talking about our internal detox system and our internal toxic load. So what happened is that our body are, these little buckets. Different organs have different size buckets, and the goal of it is to, you know, have the organ to do what it can do. But then with over time, there's stressors, there's toxins, and they build up together and they form a total aggregate of a toxic load that over time could actually stress out a system where it becomes so overfull that our body starts breaking down. It's not good for it. And so the most common thing you think about is actually, emotional stress could cause that. Dietary stress can cause that. Toxic environment like chemicals, things our liver can't get through, medications we take regularly, food that are not healthy for us, toxic chemicals or pesticides. So those things all add up to that, filling up that bucket. So it's super important for us to be conscious about passively, how do we live throughout life passively without adding to that toxic load. So I'm going to go through some big topics first, and um, the first one is actually air. So when you first walk into the room, I think that it's most important that you actually get a sense, you smell what the room smelled like, your house. You open the door after a long day, you get into the house, and you say, is this stuffy in here? Has it been super hot and super stuffy? Or it's really moist. It smells like mold. Is there a certain, or does it smell like home to you? Something that feels really good. Turns out our brain has this amazing ability to associate memory in our limbic brain that actually turn on or off physiological responses. And so when you come into a room and it has positive smell that creates a positive feeling, it's going to create positive physiological response. So first of all, you don't want to have a negative one. So make sure it's ventilated. Look for, whether window needs to be cracked open, whether you need to, strategically put fans in certain areas to make sure that there's good ventilation. The second one that is common that we don't pay attention enough to is actually the furnace. If you own a home or you live in a home, it's very important or own a house and live in a house, it's very important to actually go to your furnace, open it up, and check the filter. You're supposed to really be changing it every 6 months, and it's super easy to just go to your local hardware store and find a filter for it. That way, as you are breathing in air, especially when they're heated, it's important that they're blowing, actual clean air, not just old, moldy, dirty, like 20-year-old furnace air. Um, and the next thought is that the vacuum. I actually really like to make sure all my patients, especially if they have allergy issues, they have sensitivity issues, to make sure you have a HEPA filter. A HEPA filter in your vacuum, a HEPA filter in your air purifier, because what they do is they actually suck up the air. They're able to specifically pick out, anything that has um, allergen, dust mites, animal dandruffs, um, or any local environmental allergens. Actually remove them from the air, and sometimes even volatile organic particles, and they keep it in the bag itself rather than blow it back out. In a lot of the older vacuums, they would blow it back in the air, and so it's not really actually actively removing any contaminants. Same goes with air purifier. It's really important to have an air purifier that actually removes them and keeps them inside your filter rather than blow them back out. I actually like to place my air purifier. The one that I like to use is called Air Doctor, to place it in front of the furnace because, again, if you're going to be blowing air through the furnace to all different rooms, it's helpful to actually start with having an air purifier in front of your furnace. And one of the common things I find in homes now, as you see lots of commercials and marketing about, is these artificial chemical scents that you can plug into a electric outlet, or spray that can spray into old dirty laundry, especially for college students with you know. And the key is that there's actually lots of these artificial chemicals for that fragrant scents, like phosphates, phthalates. They actually cause a lot of hormone disrupting chemicals, and they cause cancer and other health issues, and could be very irritating to the skin or your lungs. And so it's important for you to not actually use any of those. Instead, use natural sources of positive smells, like essential oils that come from natural ingredients. doTERRA is a good brand. You want to look for where it's sourced. You want to look for the shelf life. You don't want to use really old, like, I found, last time I cleaned up, I found like a 16-year-old sandalwood oil that I've had for a long time, and I finally threw it away. And you don't want to have things that are just very, very old that's kind of become rancid, especially in oils. And so I like to use those and an ionic diffuser, which you just pour water and it just diffuses it into the air. I have one in different parts of my houses and also in my office. What's nice about it is that, again, I utilize that limbic wisdom. I put, lavender, or I use something called On Guard, which has the cinnamon flavor that actually builds your immune response. And I have it so that my brain has this memory of just what my relaxing, comfortable home would remind me of. And then I would, go to my office and I would turn that on and I feel the same thing. And when I go traveling, I go stay in a hotel, I'm all jet lagged, I would put on the same smell, and right away I would feel my memory would generate that remembrance of what a comfortable, calming home would be like. And it will transform my experience while I'm traveling, even though it could be stressful, into a much more calm existence. And so I love using ionic diffuser for that reason. Another important thing about air quality is actually dust, right? We think about dust is all over, and sometimes it's hard to find them, especially if we have a lot of wall hangings. But one other thing about furnishing is actually, area rugs, floor rugs. We do yoga, so we have lots of sheepskins lying around. And so now I'm more conscious about rolling them up and putting them away, or vacuuming them and washing them more regularly, because again, the more trappers there are, the more place that traps these dust, these allergens, the more it will over time build up the load for my system. I have asthma, and so I am more hyper conscious about things that trap these allergens and dusts. And the next section I would talk about is EMF. So EMF is electromagnetic field. It's now been shown by the World Health Organization that it's determined to associate with cancer. And so it's important to know where they are and identify them in your home. So they're usually associated with things that are found in Wi-Fi, electronic devices like cell phones, iPads, computers. Our body's made of all electrical signaling. And so when you have these, iPhone that you put in your breast pocket or on your pants pocket, it's really, disruptive for all the signals that happens, for our neurons. It's all just these electrical signals that are just generated throughout our body. And so we need to make sure we minimize our direct contact to it, make sure we don't put our phone on our head. We use a headset as much as we can. Microwave is a high EMF emit emitter, so it's important to not be around it all the time, especially when you turn it on. If you're going to use it, consciously, not use it maybe. But also when you sleep, a lot of people like to leave their phone to use as an alarm clock. You want to, not charge your phone next to your face at night. You don't want to have, you want to turn it onto airplane mode. Um, a good one also is actually getting these shields. The one that I use is called Aris Tech. You just stick it onto your computer devices or your Wi-Fi router, and it actually dampens some of that EMF signals. But I think more consciously too is that, well, I don't want to have to consciously go out of my way to, turn things on, turn things off every day if I remember or I forget. So, just simply go to a local hardware store, and for a very cheap price, like under $10, you can get a few of these programmable timers that you can just plug into your uh, what your router is connected to, where your TV is connected to, or computer is connected to, and I just naturally turn that off from 11 o'clock to 6 in the morning. And so I just know for a fact that at my home, without me doing anything, the router's just turned off. The next section is water. So water is everywhere, and water is so essential for us to in this topic of detoxification or toxification, because just by drinking water alone, when we drink lots of water, we're actively diluting any toxins in our system. We're also actively flushing out any system toxins by sweating it out, by peeing it out, or by actually having good bowel movement. So what we drink is actually key, and how much we drink is key. So I would say any environment that allows us to drink at least 10 glasses, 8 to 10 glasses of water is key. But also, what kind of water are we drinking? We've become a culture of using so much plastic bottle. A lot of people actually choose to buy plastic bottle water because they don't, they think that their tap water is, really um, toxic, and some of them for sure, but I think it's important to think about bottled water is definitely not as high quality. So if you have to go, to purchase it, you can go to places that have filtered water, pre-filtered water that you can, store and drink, and then use them. But I think investing in a good water filter is actually really important. The one that I like to use is called Berkey. It is a gravity filter. It has mineral stones. It alkalizes water, and it removes fluoride, chlorine, that interferes with normal thyroid function. And so it's a pretty simple product. But also, what's wrong with the plastic water is that now they're finding a lot of micro plastic particles in these water, and they actually actively disrupt our hormone, especially for female, causing infertility issues. And so it's so important to avoid them. Another, culprit is hot water boiler. I love just being able to fill my hot water boiler and just click it. A few minutes later, I have hot water, but so many of them are made with plastic. So it's very important to pay attention, get the ones that are made with stainless steel or made with glass, so that you're not exposing yourself to unnecessary plastic. Another source of water exposure is actually our skin. When we shower, when we wash our hair, we actually absorb a lot of chemicals through our body, because skin is so close to the capillary, the thin little blood vessels, whereas our gut, when we drink it, our gut has this intricate system that eliminates any toxins or unnecessary things that we don't need as a good filter, but our skin don't very much have a good filter. So, having a filter for our shower is essential for eliminating fluoride, eliminating chlorine, eliminating anything that when you steam the room, when your water is, in hot water, your room is steamed up, your ventilation is not good. So it's important to actually make sure your water is a good source of water. Um, Aquasana is a very good brand. Some other filters utilizes vitamin C that neutralizes the chlorine in it. Another key of what's happening with our tap water is that fluoride. So fluoride now, a recent paper by Lancet has published and talked about how fluoride is now 100% proven to be a neurotoxin. We just don't know to what extent it is actually compounds over the years of exposure would cause to our brain development. But certainly, if you have young children, it's so important to be aware of that potential risk, and be very mindful of minimizing that, the fluoride exposure. Another big topic that we are just bathed in is light. We're now in this, you know, environment where we're just surrounded and bombarded by junk light, light from a computer, light from fluorescent, when we go into big grocery stores, when we at work, and artificial lighting. So it's super important that we not only pay attention to the light we're exposed to, but actually consciously go out and be exposed to natural sunlight for our eyes to stimulate the melatonin release so that we can get into a good rhythm in our immune response and in also our sleeping. So melatonin is not only good for the sleep wake cycle, but it's actually really important for immune response. And so I would start with just going home and stop using CFL lights that actually off gas, and also switch to LED lights, pick softer glow ones, avoid full spectrum light, especially when you get home and it's late at night or out in the evening. You want to use ones that are dimmer. So dimmers are also very good in the house, where you can consciously start lowering the light over the course of the evening. Um, but using other sources of lights are good, like I think that salt lamps, candles are really great. Salt lamps actually, actively increase negative ions, so it's good for our air and our environment. But also for us to have, at nighttime, if you know that you are going to be using the computer, or if you know that you live in a place that's a city, lots of other lights, you can never get really dark in your house, having blue light filters in the form of glasses are really good. They have daytime ones that are called twilight glasses. Biohack has them, and what they do is that if you are always exposing yourself in the computer and you are having sleep issues, then wearing them during the time exposing to artificial light actually helps you eliminate that stimulation to your eyes. And then there's one that's a much darker version called True Dark, and I love to wear it half an hour before I go to bed, and it actually just makes all of a sudden just your house just feels so much darker, and it just all help you sleep really well at night. Um, I actually, in the discussion of salt lamps, I have salt lamps in almost all my bedrooms and my kids' room as a way to, light the night for a bedtime routine, so that we are all, just preparing ourselves into that routine of sleeping better. Um, and a really crucial, helpful tool too is a blackout curtain. Blackout curtains are so great because, until you pay attention to how much light there is, and I learned that by wearing my True Dark glasses, is finding out how much little lights there are in our house and also outside our house. People use a lot of outside lighting, the street lamps, but also for my kids, I have, my kids are 6 and 8, so I have night lights for the longest time in the hallways. And now, as they're older, they know how to find their way. I realize that those unnecessary night lights actually really makes the house really bright. And so our brain are just constantly in this bright light stimulation. So I've in the last year removed a lot of those and really truly made my house a lot more dark friendly so that I can actually rest my eyes and as a result rest my brain that way. So here are some of the first tips, and then we'll move on to the next part next.